Hi, I'm Rebecca Brand, and I'm making a very special recipe, one of my favorites, for the coronavirus. In case you want to stay in your house more, you don't want to go shopping, but you want fresh bread, this is a 40 cents a loaf, fresh loaf of bread. I've done the math, and I'll explain it to you, but let's get to the recipe. The ingredients for this dish are water, olive oil, yeast, and I'm using active dry yeast, salt, sugar, flour, and you need a bread maker. I get mine at the thrift shops and I buy them for $5 to $15 each, and I keep them around because with the amount of bread I make at home, I go through them about once a year. I think this one was $15.99. You can also get them on Amazon. I'll put the link to what I suggest underneath this video in case you want that one. Let me explain the mechanics. Open it up and you've got to twist out to get the pot. And this is what we're going to fill with our ingredients. Apparently, I didn't get it all out last time I did this recipe. A little rinse. Good enough for government work. So add 1 cup of water, plus 1/4 cup of water, and 1 tablespoon full of olive oil. And you want to make sure it's up to the top. In it goes. Next, you want to add 1 teaspoon of salt. This is kosher salt. Any salt will do because salt is just salt. And you need sugar. 1 tablespoon, because besides what you're going to eat, the yeast is going to eat. So the bread gets rising and grows big. I can make this recipe in 30 seconds. You don't even have to stir it up. It's going to do it itself. Notice I haven't touched the yeast. That comes last. It's time for the flour. Now this is where all the skill comes in. You want 3 cups of flour, and I'm going to make it flat on top. Cup 1 flat top in. Cup 2, aim, shoot, fire. Cup 3, last one in is not a rotten egg. Oh, but I failed to mention, but you also need to add 1/3 a cup. Now don't get it too much because if you do 1/2 cup, it's going to be too dry. So I think I'm eyeballing it. That looks like 1/3 a cup to me, and that's going in right now. I was wrong. That is not 1/3 a cup. Upon closer inspection, that's more like 1/2 cup. Because this is important. If you have a dry loaf, it just doesn't rise as well. But if you have a wet loaf and too much oil, it's going to have a dent in the top. I'm aiming for perfection because this is my YouTube channel. I think that's going to be okay. So in it goes. Now it's time to add the yeast, but I want a little well. And so I use 2 little fingers and I make a little well. And I add 3 level teaspoons of yeast. 1, 2, 3. Because you've put salt in there, and when it mixes all around, the salt could kill the yeast, and you don't want that. If you have a little well and the flour comes over it, it makes it so the yeast doesn't die. Let's say it's a hot day. You don't want any wrong temperatures hitting your yeast. This recipe you can also make the night before, so you wake up to fresh bread in the morning, like to make your kids sandwiches for lunch, or toast and jelly. Just think of all the things. I buy my yeast in these big blocks for $4 to $5 each. At a Smart & Final, a Costco, any of those big stores that have baking supplies. The yeast is super expensive if you buy it by the packages. It's almost $1 a packet or more. Not happy with that. The economics of this bread recipe, which is my recipe, and I call it French countryside bread because that's what it tastes like. I buy flours 25 pounds. That's about $7 to $10 for 25 pounds of flour. And for the coronavirus, you're going to want to have something like that around. You just never know. And the sugar for 10 pounds is about $4 to $5 too. And olive oil, I buy it in the largest container, and that's at like $20, and you only need a tablespoon of that. And salt, enough said. So by buying a large quantity of yeast, this could be what makes homemade bread more expensive. I have calculated all these costs out. It's less than 40 cents a loaf. I think it's more like 25 cents a loaf. And that probably includes electricity too. The deal about making homemade bread is if you don't have your stuff laid out next to your bread maker on your counter, you're probably never going to do it because this thing weighs a ton. So I keep the bread maker out on my counter next to the flour and the sugar. I have my yeast in my top shelf in my refrigerator. That's easy. And I have salt and the olive oil handy. If you do any habit for 3 weeks, it comes to you naturally. Well, whatever. This is really easy. I suggest putting a Post-it on your bread machine with this recipe. I tried many different recipes. I've made thousands of loaves of bread. This is the one I've made, I don't know, 980 at least loaves. As my kids are growing up, every day we'd have fresh bread. And in coronavirus, it's going to be tough for you to get to the store and get it fresh. So I hope this helps you. Comment and let me know what kind of recipes you want, especially for the coronavirus. I have a whole playlist on everything I'm doing, just in case I want to hunker down and not leave the house. And I also have a really great bone broth recipe, and that's on the stove now. So check me out. I'm Rebecca Brand Recipes. I'm so happy you found me here. I hope you and your family do great during the coronavirus. You know, we do need to be careful, so I want to talk to you about that. So please write down what you think, any of your thoughts, and let's have a conversation about it. Oh, back to the recipe. I can't believe I forgot. Underneath here is a little thing that's going to spin, so that's got to go into the machine. Fits into this gizmo on the bottom of the machine because that's going to spin around and make the paddle spin through your bread. This is a heating coil, and a bread maker is terrific because it makes the perfect for the rise state, which is about an hour, and then it gets it hot to bake your bread. Put in the baking pan straight down on a slant and lock it in. See? That's stuck in there. Close her up, plug her in. And all bread makers are great because they have all these little things it can do. But to keep it simple, I usually use number 1, which is basic. It's already set to press number 1. Isn't that nice? Now, if I wanted to do a 1-hour loaf, which I often do, I use 2 tablespoons of yeast. I extra the yeast because the 1-hour cycle can be quite dense. I want it to rise a little faster. My recipe is different than most because I've done this so many times. Okay, anyways, back to the basic 3-hour loaf. Press start. And in 3 hours, this is going to be done. But this is what I suggest. I've had my foils making homemade bread in my bread maker that I do all the time. These are the mistakes I make most often, which is really freaky. I've forgotten to add the water. Like, really? I have. Or there's too much oil, or there's too much flour. I don't know how this happens to me, but it does. Especially when you know the ingredients in your head. It's like, oh yeah, it just becomes an automatic routine that I have at any time. So a tip is, in about 10 minutes, when it gets to the fast spin cycle, I just take a little look-see. And if that ball looks hard and dry, I will add maybe a 1/4 cup of water to it. But that's really the only modification you can make. So if you mess up on the oil, whatever, you'll learn for next time. We're gonna let our handy dandy bread maker do its thing and we'll come back. This is a batch of exactly the recipe I'm putting in the back of this video. It seemed to be the ultimate recipe for bread maker bread. I don't want to leave you astray, so I've modified it from what I said on camera. Look at how great that little dough ball looks. Oh, soft and elastic, just the way I want it. And it's starting to rise. Oh, it feels so good. Yum. And I poke it. Look at that. It's got some sponginess to it. Looks great. And it's been rising about a half an hour. Soon it'll go all the way to the top of here. And only 8 minutes to go. Let's check it. Oh yeah, looking good. Woo. I'm gonna let it finish up. It's been 3 hours, it's ready. You're gonna take it out, which is bringing the handle, giving it a twist, and out it goes. And you gotta shake, shake, shake. Shake it out. And this is what our loaf of bread in our bread maker looks like. Doesn't that look great? Now, if I'm not ready for dinner yet, and this came out, let's say 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I want it for dinner, I will stick it in the oven at 200 degrees for the last maybe, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes, a holding temp. And what happens is the exterior of this crust will get super crunchy and delicious. Let's cut it. Oh, that sounds crusty and good. Wow, that looks great. I'm going to center slice to put lots of butter on it. When I serve it to my family, I cut it in 4 pieces because that's a lot to manage. For video purposes, I'm spreading butter on this piece. Oh yeah, that's warm inside. Yum. Time for the bite. I'm just going to pull it apart. That's awesome. It's my very favorite recipe, French countryside bread. I'm Rebecca Brand. Subscribe to my channel, and I hope you watch my whole series on hunkering down for the coronavirus. And isn't that amazing? Less than 40 cents for this loaf of bread And you can make it every single day with 30 seconds prep time, I promise, after a few practices, once you get in the habit. This is a wonderful thing to have anytime, every day, no matter what's going on in life. Fresh bread. See you next time. Wow. Bread break. If you like this video, here's some more of my coronavirus preparation videos right over here.